Hey everyone, Brian here with you to play a game. Whose life would you rather live? Candidate 1 was born in 1588, the same year that Philip II of Spain decided to try and invade England to rid it of Protestantism. Much of his life would be defined by tumultuous events, most notably the English Civil War and the execution of the English King Charles I in 1649. He would spend most of his life in Paris in exile. Candidate 2, born in 1632 and schooled in London among some of the brightest English scientists of the day. Candidate 2 quite possibly heard and saw the crowds who watched the execution of Charles I of England. While he was once implicated in a plot against the English crown and spent 60 years in exile, most of his life was spent as a somewhat well-known intellectual in England, enjoying patronage or financial support from wealthy English families. And finally, Candidate 3 was born in Geneva, a deeply Huguenot city ruled by a small group of citizens who voted on almost everything, and yet debate on the topics of the day was encouraged for everyone. While he spent some time in exile after making the remark that all religions on earth were equally worthy, most of his life was spent couch surfing with incredibly notable scientists, princes, and leaders. So, whose life would you pick and why? While you're thinking about it, also think about these questions. Who were these three guys, and what influenced their thinking? What were their revolutionary ideas about society that paved the way for modern democracy? And how did these ideas lead to other society-transforming ideas? And here's a big picture question for you to ponder. Can you analyze the impact of a changing world on the formation of revolutionary ideas? Our mystery men are Candidate 1, Thomas Hobbes, Candidate 2, John Locke, and Candidate 3, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. From their experiences, they crafted revolutionary ideas about society and paved the way for modern democracy. Quickly pause the video here and reflect back on the brief synopsis of their lives and consider how their viewpoints may have inspired new and revolutionary ideas. Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau lived in and around an era of scientific revolution. As the old understanding of the world changed, the old order of rulers and churches also began to change, much of it motivated by costly conflict. Thomas Hobbes, the oldest of these gentlemen, lived through the English Civil Wars and the execution of Charles I. As a man trained to be a natural philosopher, which is what you or I would call a scientist today, he mused upon the causes of war and conflict. Hobbes believed that before the rise of governments, all mankind must have existed in what he called the state of nature. While it sounds pretty nice, Hobbes thought it was awful. For Hobbes, the state of nature was a lawless place where people killed each other over limited resources and petty disagreements, as humans are by nature fragile, fearful, impressionable, and psychologically prickly creatures susceptible to ideological manipulation. Hobbes believed that without government in place, human lives were solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Head back to your speculation on Hobbes and, given what you know now, add to your predictions for Hobbes and his theory. John Locke was of the opinion that people weren't born with a set of knowledge, skills, and ideas, but rather as a tabula rasa, or blank slate. People are the product of their experiences, and most importantly, people's experiences can change over time. Locke stated, "Whatever I write, as soon as I discover it not to be true, my hand shall be the forwardest to throw it into the fire." People can change through experience, and Locke argued society can and must change as well. Head back to your speculation on Locke, and given what you know now, add to your predictions for Locke and his theory. 8 years after Locke died and 33 years after Hobbes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau was born in Geneva, where decisions were made by citizen voting. While many people in Geneva didn't get to vote, they could debate current events, and did so relatively freely. And from this free exchange of ideas, Rousseau thought, what if the state of nature isn't as awful as Hobbes thought? For Rousseau, conflict came from owning things. If no one owned anything, wouldn't we by default be better to each other? Rousseau believed it was necessary to have a government because we had decided to own property and claim things. Head back to your speculation on Rousseau and, given what you know now, add to your predictions for Rousseau and his theory. Isaac Newton's third law of motion states that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So what was the reaction of these three to their experiences? In his book Leviathan, Hobbes argued that the worst thing was a bellum omnium contra omnes, or a war of all against all. Much like the state of nature, war was to be avoided at all costs. A strong ruler was needed, and if this ruler helped to keep you alive, then you owed him your allegiance. It didn't matter if everything else he did was awful, he was the boss. Hobbes referred to this agreement as a social contract. This is a biggie. A social contract is the idea of an agreement between people and their rulers. It can be written down or unspoken, but it implies the ideas of rules and limits. For Hobbes, the social contract was in place to avoid chaos. Life may be hard, and a ruler may make it even harder, but do you really want to risk war for your own selfish needs? Given what you know about Hobbes, why do you think his experiences and outlook would lead him to believe that this kind of agreement was good for people? Pause and answer in your lesson guide. John Locke also believed that humans are selfish by nature, but he was of the opinion that human nature is additionally rooted in tolerance and reason. He therefore believed and communicated through his work 2 treatises on government that people were born with the right to life, liberty, and property. Does that sound familiar to you? If it did, how about this? Locke believed that governments derive their powers from the consent of the governed, and that a government's function was to safeguard those rights against intrusion. Given what you know about Locke, why do you think his experiences and outlook would lead him to believe that this kind of agreement was good for people? Pause and answer in your lesson guide. Rousseau lived after both of the former gentlemen, but was heavily influenced by them when he wrote The Social Contract in 1762. Rousseau, my dude, plagiarize much? Anyways, while Rousseau agreed with Locke and Hobbes that there was an agreement, and agreed with Locke that people being ruled also had rights, he went further and said that everyone not only was born with rights, but they were born equal. For Rousseau, all titles of nobility were as a result of people claiming property, which made them unequal. That imaginary inequality was the source of conflict. Additionally, while Locke believed that there was an agreement between government and their people, Rousseau believed that the foundation of government was the people. Because people were free and equal, all power for governance was not done to them, but derived from them. Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau conceived a set of momentous concepts, rephrased their ideas into a statement on government. Pause and answer in your lesson guide. The musings of these men were nothing short of world-changing. Before Rousseau passed away in 1778, these ideas would culminate first in the American Revolution and later in revolutions throughout the world. The Old World was built upon an Old World order. If fundamental government organization changed, what else was possible? Enter the philosophers. Congregating in France throughout the 1700s, the philosophers looked at the changing world and discussed, well, everything, but their key tenets were reason, nature, happiness, progress, and, of course, liberty. Before we move on, pause here and craft your own definitions for these words in your lesson guide. Voltaire. If Howard Stern, Stephen Colbert, Trevor Noah, Seth Meyers, and Jon Stewart could all be combined into one person, it would be François-Marie Arouet de Voltaire. Using satire or biting ironic commentary meant to convey a critique, Voltaire wrote over 70 books and plays poking fun at the clergy and aristocracy of France. He was also a huge believer in the freedom of speech, once commenting, "I disapprove of what you say, but will defend to the death your right to say it." Montesquieu, another French writer, greatly admired the English Bill of Rights and the balancing of powers between royalty, parliament, and the court. In his book, Spirit of the Law, Montesquieu argued that power should be able to check power. This book went over really well in the backwater American colonies, where the governmental founders would eventually create a system of checks and balances, power-checking power, if you will, in their new government. Cesare Baccaria, an Italian-born philosopher, reasoned that government should seek to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. In that vein, Beccaria believed that laws should enforce justice, that torture should never be used, that capital punishment should be abolished, and that trials for those accused of a crime should be speedy, and that the punishment should fit the crime. From rights to justice, from consent of the governed to freedom of speech, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and the other philosophers threw out quite a few ideas that are deeply embedded within modern societies. Briefly pause here, go to your lesson guide, and pick two of the beliefs we discussed and describe where you see these beliefs applied today. A new world of science begat a new world of political philosophy where men with diverse experiences put forward ideas about people and governance which would rock the foundations of the world. Don't forget to check out the extension activity and remember, history is everywhere.